Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for a quick rebuild of the Z32's Alternator. Now, this is an Alternator off an 89 twin turbo. See if I can get you the thingamajiggy in focus. Alright, so if this doesn't end up coming out on the video any good, it's a 2310031P10. And underneath that we have a 3T05192, 12 volts, 90 amps, Mitsubishi 9831, which I assume is a date code. So there you go, it's a Mitsubishi Alternator, 90 amp for a twin turbo. So, let's get this sucker apart so we can get a positive identification on the components that we need to rebuild the thing. Alrighty. An impact gun's a marvellous thing, folks. Absolutely marvellous. Alright, we'll go over to the press and we'll just quickly press this this pulley off. Oh, look, no need, folks. She just came straight off. How good's that? Now, folks, I'm quite a novice at this. I have rebuilt a few alternators in my life. Last one I did was probably 20 years ago, though. So, I'll just have to be a little bit careful on how I approach all this. You can see, well, you would have heard from the last video, the bearings are shot in it. It's still actually charging, but it's, you know, it needs a full rebuild. She's pretty, how's it going? So what we're going to do is get her apart, identify what components we need, order the bits and pieces, give the whole alternator body a good clean up, check everything, and you know, then reassemble it. Maybe even replate some of the bits and pieces just to make it all look nice and tidy. So let's get her apart. Excuse the mess on the bench too, folks. I'm in the middle of 3 or 4 different little projects. I've got bloody crap everywhere. She's a little bit frustrating. Nothing worse than working in a bloody messy work environment. But unfortunately, sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it. Well, those screws in the middle there, that's probably maybe the bearing carrier. I don't think we need to get that apart. Alright, let's get this front cover off. Bit of a tappy tap tap should sort this out. Maybe. One would assume. There we go. That actually came out pretty easy, folks. Just barely a tap. Ah, yes. Okay, so that those 4 screws there, folks, that retains our bearing in the center there. Some sort of a bearing retainer. See how filthy she is inside? Not very pleasant at all. A little bit of a spacer guy here. Now, there we go. Ah, yes. And that bearing on the end, folks, she is toast. Unfortunately, you can see the state of this thing, folks. It sits right next to the power steering pump on this vehicle, so it's in a situation where it can just ingest tons of oil and crap. Like looking at this inside, it's like looking into the abyss. Here we go. That's just the absolute state of it, folks. Just look at that, just how filthy that is. Doesn't get much filthier than that. So we will continue to carry on and just keep cleaning this and stripping it down. You can see there's just so much smoo in the internals of this alternator, but I'm sure we can clean it all up and get it all functioning again. Maybe. We just need to get everything out and have a bit of a look at it. I'm just undoing these 2 screws up in here, folks. It's a bit hard to see again, folks, with all the shmoo, but that screw there and that screw there, I'm just getting those undone at the moment. I'm really flying a bit blind here, but I'll just undo everything I can and see what happens. See how loose everything becomes and what else I can get to. Got one screw that's in a little bit of a bugger of a spot to get to, folks, but I think I'm possibly going to be able to pry him out a bit and then get to that screw. Hopefully. There we go. Gotcha. Got me head onto it, folks. Sometimes you've just got to get your head into it. Alrighty. It's our third screw, so we now should be able to hopefully get this whole sort of mechanism out. What was that just dropped out? That case. This is our cover off the bizzo down the back there, the regulator. That's just sort of dropped out. That was from those first two screws that we got out. And hopefully this all should just kind of push out and this back cover will come off like that. As you can see there, beautiful little mess. Rightio. So now this is our regulator, which does seem to be functioning correctly at this stage, folks. That also holds your brushes. I'd say the brushes are probably quite worn though. Oh look, they're just sticking in from all the schmoo. Anyway, so next thing I think I might do, folks, is just clean this up. Really needs to go through a parts washer. I have got a parts washer here, but it's not set up at the moment, so I think I'm going to have to set up my parts washer and just kind of submerge this thing, just because it is just so filthy. So filthy. What a mess. So I think that's the go, folks. I think all of this will run it through the parts washer, clean it all up, just so I've got a bit of a better idea of what I'm doing here, because I can't really make out anything. I can't sort of spot connectors and stuff. Pretty sure I'm going to have to desolder this regulator, sort him out. It's just not happening at the moment. I can't see shit in amongst all the schmoo. Alrighty, let's clean this up. Right, folks, the parts washer's out. Let's see if we can get some of this horrible crud out of this unit here. As you can see, folks, we are getting there slowly, but we're getting all the crud out of there. A bit more soaking and a few little different brushes to get in there, and we should be looking good. A bit of this is going to be replaced, new regulator, new brushes and everything going on there, new bearings and everything, obviously. As you see, like, it's pretty still a little bit gummed up, but nothing like it was. But we will get all this crud out of it. Brushes seem to be pretty much jammed in there. I've managed to get one of them loose, but the other one just won't move, so I can't imagine it was doing a real lot. But yeah, so I'm using diesel, basically just diesel fuel in this parts washer, folks. It's pretty tame and pretty mild on electrical components and stuff like this, like it won't dissolve any of the lacquer on the windings and create any problems. I'm hoping anyway. It generally doesn't, but we'll test it all before we sort of put it back into service and everything. But yeah, so I might as well turn this off now, folks. It's just more of the same. I'll just keep, using different little brushes to get in the little areas, and I'll be using a bit of compressed air and this and that just to get it all clean. But as you can see, it is coming up reasonably well. So I'll give you a squiz when it's all nice and clean. Right, folks, so here's all of our clean alternator parts laid out in front of us here. We've got all the crap out of it. It's looking pretty tidy. Our rotor came up pretty good. The slip ring on it is in pretty good condition there, as you can see. I'll probably throw it in the lathe and just give it a little bit of a turn and a bit of a clean up with some emery paper or something, but it actually doesn't have any real wear on it, which is fantastic. Our stator assembly looks pretty good here. Once again, we got all the crap out of it, which was the main thing. So that's looking pretty funky. So that's our regulator, folks, and that's the rectifier there. So I'm going to replace the regulator. It holds your carbon brushes. I've managed to get the carbon brushes to move now. They were pretty much seized in there before, but they are very worn down. That's full extension. They're normally, oh mate, double if not triple that length normally, I reckon. So I'll buy a regulator which already has carbon brushes in it, and it's just a matter of desoldering it from these couple of points in there and sort of soldering it back on. Rectifiers are generally pretty solid. Very rarely do you need to change rectifiers, in my understanding. Realistically, this regulator is probably fine. What I will do is buy another set of carbon brushes and put new brushes in this and keep it as a spare, and just throw it back on the shelf, Yeah, so that's that. We've got our front and back bearings here. The big guy off the front, who seems to be the most worn, it's making a hell of a lot of noise. Bits and pieces down there, screws, nuts and bolts. Pulley came up all right. I'll probably replate that, I reckon. I'm sure before I get this assembled, I'll be doing a bit of plating and stuff, so I'll probably replate that. Replate these bolts and brackets and a lot of the screws and things. Housings all came up pretty good, as you can see. All the crap's out of those now, so the alternator's got half a chance. So we're looking pretty good, folks. So now I know what I need. I'll order all the parts, and as soon as they come in, we'll do a bit of an assembly. I'll see you then. Right, folks, parts are finally in. So it's time to rebuild this sucker. Actually, I lie. The parts have been here for about 6 months. I've just been busy doing other things, which is a little bit of a problem because I've pretty much forgotten how I pulled this thing apart. So that's never a good thing. Anyway, I'll just run you through what I've got. These are our 2 old bearings here. These are the 2 new ones. So the small fella, if you can see it there, it's a B885D. It's a Febes brand, but the brand is really irrelevant when it comes to this sort of stuff. It's the bearing number, folks, the B885D. As you can see, I'll leave it in the plastic, but it's the same as our original. And this guy, it is a B1586D, and this is an NSK that I'm replacing it with. Just be wary that the numbers on your original bearings aren't really relevant. These numbers that are on here, which normally I can just get a bearing off the numbers that are on there, don't actually match up with the bearing references that I use. So just be very careful, folks. If you're following what I'm doing with this specific alternator, you won't go wrong. Okay, I've got a new regulator and brushes here. I bought this online from Maniac Electronics, I think, in the US. They sell on eBay, and plus they have their own web store. That was reasonably cheap. All this stuff's been reasonably cheap. And I've done a lot more cleanup on all the components. After we got all this clean, I've since wire brushed it all. None of it's painted or anything. It's just been wire brushed. And as you can see, it's come up pretty good. I've thrown a bit of paint on the stator So just around the edges here I've painted that, and I painted the top of the heatsink on there. It was originally red, but it was all pretty shabby, so I just repainted it. The rotor here, I did clean it up a little bit, not a huge amount. I did actually put it in the lathe with some 600 grit paper and just really clean this area up here where the brush has run on. It's actually in pretty good condition. All I did was just give it a light going over, just to get rid of some tiny marks that were on there, but that's all turned out pretty good. So we're pretty much ready to start putting the thing back together. So the first thing that we'll need to do, folks, is to desolder the old voltage regulator. Now, just get a bit of light down in there. So what we have to do is desolder this point here and this point over here, and that will release the old regulator. So I'll get that done and then we'll move on from there. So that's done now, folks. There's the regulator there. Out of that, just a matter of getting a hot soldering iron on it and just kind of pulling it out and then just cleaning up the solder, you know. So what we've got to do now is refit this guy back into the housing like that. That's pretty much it. I've just got to get the screws in it, so it's all sort of firmly fixed in position, because we really need everything located before we go soldering the new parts in, just so that we don't end up with a bolt hole that doesn't line up or something's not exactly right. So I'll get all this screwed in and then we'll solder the new regulator in. I'll be back in a second. And that's where the battery went flat. So it really was just a matter of getting everything screwed in position so it all lines up, getting a hot iron, whack some solder on those 2 points, and you know, you're all good to go. If you know how to solder, you'll be able to do this very easily. There is absolutely nothing hard about it. But yeah, sorry, I didn't even spot that the camera had turned off. So we'll continue on now with the next step that follows soldering that new regulator in. Okay, here we go. So the next job, folks, is the rotor bearing, the little guy on the end of this. So I'll just throw a little block of wood down here, sit that on so we don't damage anything. Again, that's our old bearing, that's our new one. They're identical. I've just checked them with the verniers just to make sure. So yes, this guy now goes on here. No need for a press or anything with this, guys. It should just tap together fairly easily. That appears to be that. Now this should just go straight into this, hopefully, without any problems. We should be able to just slot this straight in there. Go. I think we're in. Alrighty. Now, next thing I've got to do before I forget, this spacer goes back on there. Now we can put this to the side and throw our front bearing in. New bearing, old bearing. Something I generally like to do, folks. I trust no one. We'll just measure this and make sure they are the same. Yep. External is good. Yep, that's the one. Okay, so now it'll go easily onto there. This is where we've got to set it. So we've just got to tap this into here, folks. So what I might do is just grab my little block of wood back, and I'll just tap this in. Just have a little bit of a look. So really, when we're hard down, as opposed to me that's hard up, 13.75. 13.93, so the bearing's going to be slightly proud when it's all the way down. So I know not to get all too excited if it's slightly proud. Alright, otherwise I'd be trying to keep belting it in, folks, and it wouldn't go. Is it really going to support it? Not really. Let's see if I can give this a little bit better support, folks, when I drive it in. The bearing's going in around this edge here, and I'm a bit worried I don't want to crack it around that edge when I drive it in. I might just see what I've got here. I'm probably being a bit ridiculous, but that's a bit too big. This is a bit better, folks. See, that goes on around there and just goes more to that outer edge where we're putting the pressure on. At least I know if I've got this under there, I'm not going to crack that outside when I'm driving this guy in. Looks like it's going to sort of go in pretty easily anyway. But you never know, folks, you never know. It's too late when you've done it and buggered it up. There we go, that's the one. We are just ever so slightly proud. Couple of little taps for good measure. And that looks pretty good to me, folks. So, now we'll just put our bearing retaining plate on. Don't think these need any Loctite or anything on them, folks, either, because that plate on the underneath is flexing, like it's pulling up on the outside, sort of like a spring washer as it's doing up, which is why they left the bearing proud, I think, just because it allows you to get a bit of tension on that plate. Alright, that's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Okay, so the main thing is, we didn't forget this spacer. Now, I think this should go straight on, folks. It should go straight on. Now, which one? Okay, it looks like that is the one there. There we go. That wasn't too bad. Alright, that went down pretty easily. As long as I've got the right bit lined up, which I'm certain I do. That's the hole for that guy. Now we'll put these bolts back in. I'll let you in on a little secret, folks. I am going to replate all these bolts when I do this for real. Like it's all assembled now just so that I know everything's good, but when the time comes I am going to actually pull these back out and replate them. But I was getting a bit worried that I was going to start losing stuff, because like I say, I have had this sitting around for a fair while with all these pieces, and that is always a bit of a worry. Ah yes, it's getting there, it's pulling together nicely. Alright, well, I'm pretty confident that everything is doing what it's meant to be doing, folks. No idea if this is where this goes, this little piece here, and whether it's in the right end, but I'll check that out when the time comes, folks. It might even go around the other way, but just keeps it all in one piece. Got that going on. Again, this is just going on temporary. This is all going to be replated. As I said, I'm worried I'm going to start losing stuff. Alright, so the only thing left to do, folks, is to pull this guy out that holds the brushes in position. When this comes out, the brushes will fling back like that. We've now got brush contact, and that should be it. And there you have it, folks. That was a pretty long haul, but you see at the end of it, what we've got is a nice, spanky, clean, rebuilt alternator. It didn't cost an arm and a leg to do, and we did it ourselves. So, you know, if it doesn't work, we've only got ourselves to blame, other than component failure, of course. But that's looking pretty good, and it's going to look even better when I replate all the bolts and the pulley. So at least that can go on the shelf now in one piece until I'm doing a batch of plating, because like I say, I was very concerned that I was going to start losing stuff, like the knowledge of how to put it back together for a start. So I hope you like this little alternator rebuild video, folks. You know, you saw what it was like at the beginning. It's just a dirty, filthy, schmooey mess. And now we've got something that's pretty much as good as new, and hopefully it'll work fine. And if it does work initially, it'll work. That's all there is to it. And we know it's no longer full of crud, and it's got new bearings, so it should certainly have a lot of life left in it now. So hopefully this video will inspire some of you guys to not be afraid to attack something like this yourself, and you know, learn a new skill, save some money, and even get a little bit of therapy in the process. So anyway, folks, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel and all that fantastic stuff. And as always, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.